Hi there folks, I'm Mike and this is CMCC Builds. Some of you may remember this video, the top builds when you roll really great stats. That decision is a good problem to have, rich people problems. But the pendulum has to swing in the other direction, regression to the mean will occur. And sometimes you roll complete shit. What do you do then? Well, the obvious choice is to blackmail your DM with the pictures you found on his computer when he was passed out drunk on cheap mead after a binge session of the Acolyte. I see you, Jacob. But the less obvious choice would be to simply make the best build you can while using those weak stats as little as possible. That means all marshals are out because they all use an attack and damage stat. Most spellcasters are out too because they need spell attacks and spell save DCs to be at least decently high, like your blood pressure when you saw those initial rolls. But most is not all. So what do you do? With my first roll when putting this build together, I got 2 12s, an 11, 2 8s, and a 5. Yeah, that was my first roll. Yikes. Not the worst, but definitely bad. And you know why those rolls were so bad? Because I made them on some web-based platform, completely disconnected from the divine powers of the dice gods. If you want quality rolls, you need quality dice. Dice that connect you to the dice gods better than any website option available. Dice that defy the rules of physics and probability. Dice so good, you can only roll natural 20s. It's right there in the name. Only crits. You want to roll 8s for your stats? Do what I did. Roll digital dice. You want to roll 18s for your stats? Click the link below. Use code CMCC for 12% off everything on the site. Get yourself 4 sets of dice and roll those D6s. If I can be serious for a second though, the products are fantastic. I love the dice. Check them out. You won't be disappointed. They're good people as well that support the channel, and not everyone is willing to do that. You guys have that in common. Get those dice, roll those 20s. All right, back to the build. Your primary stat will be potentially 4 behind someone who just did the point buy method and took a feat race, or 6 behind someone who rolled at least one great number. That's a 2 to 3 point difference on your modifier. What can we possibly do with this stat line? One option, as the old joke goes, is to put the 5 into Constitution, start as a wizard, which would give you a starting hit point total of, 3. 3 starting hit points. 1 hit from the Goblin Patrol hiding around the corner, and that's a wrap, folks. Roll up another useful character. Or if you're drawn to challenges, you may want to make a competent character despite those crappy stats. Let's do just that. With low stats, you want to bump as many as possible. There are 3 main races that provide more than the standard 3 ASI bonus points. The Human, the Half-Elf, and the Mountain Dwarf. The plus 6 points will be largely useless on any decent build we choose, as we need to focus on only 1 or maybe 2 abilities. The Half-Elf could be an excellent option, depending on how many odd numbers you have. But here, with the rolls we have, we want to bump 2 stats, the primary stat and Constitution. So Mountain Dwarf it is. But again, don't sleep on the Half-Elf if your stats vary from the ones we use here, which they likely will. Dwarves get Dark Vision and Resilience against Poison, advantage on saving throws and resistance to damage. The rest of their traits are mostly ribbons or proficiencies we don't care about. Okay, the fun part. What are we doing with those ability scores? We're going to put that 5 in Strength. Strength is generally a good dump stat, but for RP reasons, I think it makes for a much more interesting character. 12 in Dex, not ideal since we won't have heavy armor for a while, and we'll want to win initiative as often as possible, but such is life with shite rolls. A positive modifier is better than no modifier. 11 Constitution, we're going to bump that to 13 right now. I don't even like seeing the 11. That gives a +1 to HP, and we'll make sure to find a way to even that out at a respectable 14 eventually. Intelligence and Charisma get the 8s. We're going to be a weak, grumpy, dim-witted type character. But that 12 is going into Wisdom and immediately bumps to 14. This will be our primary stat. 16 is the standard. When rolling, 18s and 20s can and do happen, so 14 is a bit worse with rolled stats than point buy, but it's not the end of the world with this build, because one particular class can be extremely powerful with minimal use of the primary stat. And that, of course, is the Druid. More specifically, and because we bury the lead enough to this point, the Moon Druid. Take Arcana for scrolls and Perception because, it's a perception. Add to those with your background to get Stealth and Insight, along with a couple of tool proficiencies, and a background feature. Equipment will depend on your DM, but you should be allowed normal medium armor, so get to half plate as soon as you can. A wooden quarterstaff as a focus and a potential weapon, and a wooden shield for a nice AC bump. Yeah, Dex is only +1 right now, but that good armor and shield do help. Let's take a moment to answer why Moon Druid. There is certainly the option to play something like a Shepherd Druid and pick a flying race and cast summon spells and fly out of harm's way, but with a low dex and con, it's a bit too risky for me. You need those added HP from beast forms, and those added constitution points from those forms for the concentration checks. Cast a powerful concentration spell, shift into beast mode, and use a boosted con and subsequent feats to protect concentration. And with a 5 strength, morphing into creatures with 19 strength and higher is just so cool. The frail little mountain dwarf, barely 4 feet tall, can hardly hold that big quarterstaff. What? Oh, now he's one of the scariest real-life animals in existence that can maul a damn bull moose? Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. At level 1 and 2, you'll have 2 cantrips. Guidance is a must-have unless you have another in the party with it. I like Mold Earth and Shape Water probably more than most optimizers I see, but I feel this build needs a ranged attack early, just in case spells have been used and there are no wild shape charges left. You'll need to kite and throw from range. Magic Stone makes that happen. And later, it can be given to pack the Chain Warlocks in your party or any summons that can make use of them. For first level spells, Absorb Elements, you'll absolutely need spells like these to improve survivability. Goodberry, again, survivability for you and your party. Use all your slots before sleeping to gather good berries and have them for another 16 hours when you wake up the next day. Druid's prep spells, so feel free to switch out Goodberry at that point to something like Fairy Fire or Fog Cloud. Healing Word is Healing Word. And finally, Entangle. This will be the big concentration spell for the first 2 levels. A solid area of effect. The effect itself is very strong, restrained, and an action and break free, and it results in difficult terrain. This is important because your spell save DC is not good, so the spell has a decent effect even when Team Bad Guy makes their saves. You will cast concentration spells like this one and shift into something like a Brown Bear, which bumps your con to 16 and adds 34 hit points. That's more than double what this build has at level 2. Brown Bears have a terrible AC of 11, so they will get hit a bunch. Feel free to just use their 40 feet of movement and 30 foot climb speed to simply run and hide as your party cleans up the non-restrained enemies. Or if they're being overwhelmed despite your Entangle spell, dive in and rip some kobolds to shreds. For levels 2 to 3 and potentially even 4, Moon Druids are OP, and you won't feel those crappy rolls one bit. They really drop off at this point though, but are still absolutely playable with the right spells and playstyle. By level 4 with the ASI feat, take Resilient Con. This is generally a great feat, but here it's absolutely S tier. It brings Constitution to a respectable 14. You can live with that, metaphorically and literally. The Constitution save proficiency now pairs nicely with the Brown Bear's +3 modifier from Constitution, so your +1 save, +3 in bear form now bumps to +3 and +5, and will bump again at level 5. This is important because the non-DC dependent concentration spells just got a whole lot better. Summon Beast is tempting, but we need to stay alive and use our spell modifier as little as possible. Guess what the 2 best Druid spells at this level do not use? Your Wisdom score, hooray! Pass Without a Trace gives a flat +10 bonus to stealth, allowing you to turn the entire party into ninja assassins. And end fights before they ever get started. Use this a lot. And of course, Spike Growth, my favorite. Difficult terrain, 2d4 damage every 5 feet. No save? Yes please. At level 5, 3rd level spells get even better. 6th level turns those bear paws magical, and the beast forms increase in power to CR2. Unfortunately, the power level jump doesn't double here. The polar or cave bear is a bit better than the brown bear, but not significantly better. The general go-to at this level is the giant constrictor snake with its 60 hit points and constrict attack. It can swim and it's huge, so if you're in tight quarters, stick to the bears. For spells, you get a new cantrip. If you're really a creative player that thinks outside the box, either Mold Earth or Shape Water are the right picks for you, but the safest choice is going to be Thornwood. It's ranged, it's damage, just scaled, unlike Magic Stone, and it provides forced movement, which combos great with hazards like Spike Growth. That said, it does rely on your primary stat, so I'm going to take Shape Water here. For your level 3 spells, Revivify is a must-prepare spell for any adventuring day, and of course, the big one, Conjure Animals. Summon those Velociraptors, wild shape into the creature of your choice. Hey, choose a Deinonychus. You want to get those Jurassic Park vibes going, and enjoy. If your DM doesn't allow Conjure Animals, explain to him or her that your highest stat roll was a 12. If that doesn't work, find a new table. If your best friend is your DM, find a new best friend. Kidding. Am I? I would also unprepare a spell like Entangle and add the fantastic non-concentration spell Plant Growth. None of the 3 spells chosen use Wisdom, including the offensive and defensive spell Conjure Animals. At this point, we're going to multi-class into literally the only class we're able to, Cleric. Be aware that you must have a Wisdom of at least 13 to do this. So if you rolled nothing above a 10 and only have a 12 wisdom right now, you have no option but to go straight Druid. And here's the thing, coming closer so you can hear, that still works. The Cleric Divine Domain we will choose here is Life Cleric. This immediately gives the infamous Life Berry combo, which combines Disciple of Life and Good Berry to make each berry provide 3 hit points of healing rather than just 1. A first level spell now heals a guaranteed 30 hit points. That's insane. Life Clerics also get heavy armor proficiency. This character has a 5 strength. But we're a dwarf in half plate, working with a 12 dexterity. Guess what? We can now rock full plate and suffer no penalty. I'll take it. This is a really strong dip, but does remove the Moon Druid's level 20 feature, which is incredibly powerful. But this dip is strong every level you have it, so feel free to take it as early as you like. But I prefer to get it after Conjure Animals. The spell is just that powerful. But if your survivability is super low because your stats are that bad, this may be a level 2 dip for you to get that heavy armor, life berries, and some other healing. For spells, take the 3 cantrips, Mending, Sacred Flame, and Toll the Dead. Additional ranged options are nice, but they do rely on wisdom. Clerics have such a limited selection of cantrips, you really don't have many better options. For level 1 spells, Life Clerics, auto-prepare Bless and Cure Wounds, both fine. You're probably not using Bless, but if your higher level slots are used up, there's certainly a place for this one. For the prepared slots, Command, Detect Magic as a ritual option, and Sanctuary are solid picks despite the use of Wisdom. 2 more levels in Druid brings 4th level spells and another ASI feat. Here we want to shore up concentration as much as possible. If the build loses concentration, it will be bad, as that is the primary source of the character's power. Warcaster gives advantage to those checks and also allows spells to be cast with hands full. So if you have a magic wand or a staff in one hand and a shield in the other, this solves that in most cases. At this point, I would unprepare Spike Growth in most situations. It's unlikely you'll be spending your concentration on the spell at this level. That opens the door to 3 fantastic concentration spells. Conjure Woodland Beings, take Dryads if you can. Baldur's Gate 3 makes this the only option, and it's great there too. Entangle, Good Berry, 3 times per day each, and Pass Without a Trace once. That frees up your concentration on that spell, while also tripling up on Good Berry. Your wisdom doesn't matter here. Polymorph, which should be cast on your allies, not enemies, which means your wisdom doesn't matter here either. Now you can have a giant ape as an ally, along with you as a giant constrictor snake, or perhaps an animal that kites better. Or just hang in the back as a 20 AC dwarf and sling Sacred Flames and Tolls of the Dead. Finally, Wall of Fire is a strong option here because after the initial casting, the damage auto-procs based on proximity to the wall. Spell DC isn't used at that point. At level 9, you can use CR3 Beasts as wild shapes. Giant Scorpion has some really solid features, but its to hit of +4 is just atrocious. The Spotted Lion or Ankylosaurus are potentially better options in my eyes, but it won't matter long because Elemental Wild Shape is right around the corner at level 10. For the remainder of this character's life, you will likely be spending those wild shapes on one of these forms. Air Elemental has incredible speed and flying/hover. If your build is looking to cast the spell, Wild Shape, and Kite, which this build is, then Air is the pick. With your new spells, Thorn Whip is now a good option if you haven't taken it yet. With the new level 5 spells, take Anti-Life Shell, a Pure Wind Now spell against creatures with no counterplay. It also doesn't use your spell modifier or spell DC at all, and Wall of Stone does the same. If you want to see just how powerful the spell can be and how underrated it is, check out Bill Braun's run at the level 14 Gauntlet. It straight won the incredibly tough first encounter. At level 12, another feat, which means we've made the decision to not max out Wisdom. So be it. All builds want to go first, but this build really wants to go first. Getting caught before you can cast a control spell and bonus action Wild Shape to get out of dodge could be an encounter changer. And in really bad combats, it could be a combat ender. It shouldn't be that bad, but it won't be good. We've taken care to choose plenty of spells that are powerful without the use of Wisdom, so I think we can run with that. So alert it is. With the level 6 spells, at this point, I want to take it easy on concentration spells, and there are 2 good non-wisdom based options, Heal and Hero's Feast. Strong party support options, and even more so on this build. A flat 70 points of healing and curing blindness, deafness, and disease, no rolls, is exactly what we want. Hero's Feast buffs the entire party, again, no rolls or wisdom based effects. At level 14, Moon Druids. Get 1,000 forms for unlimited castings of Alter Self, sure. All the way to level 16, here we are going to bump Wisdom. It's been long enough, we have the feats this build absolutely needs. We get some added spells to this point. For level 7 spells, I really only want Mirage Arcane. Shape the environment to your will. This spell is just broken, so work with your DM on limitations. If that giant war camp in the valley below is suddenly sleeping on a bed of molten lava, your DM might not be pleased if you spring that up mid-session. For 8th level spells, Antipathy Sympathy is the pick. Non-concentration lasts for 10 days, provides options, and has a strong effect. Does use Wisdom, which isn't ideal for this build, but at this point Wisdom is respectable, 16. For the remaining spells, I would prep Greater Restoration, better to have it and not need it and all that. Dispel Magic is another one I may have prepared earlier if others in my party don't have it. And finally, Sleet Storm, a lower concentration option that doesn't deal damage, but it does make it incredibly difficult for enemies to maneuver. Creatures trying to navigate the storm may fall prone, have to push through difficult terrain, and will burn actions dashing through the ice. And perhaps its best use against enemy casters because it both blocks vision and potentially breaks concentration. It does use spell DC for concentration and dex saves, which is the primary reason we didn't take this spell earlier. If that bothers you and you just want to make use of lower slots, re-prepping Spike Growth is also an option. I would probably just spend 2nd level slots on end of the day life berries or emergency castings of Healing Word, assuming you're not just spending them on Pass Without a Trace. And for the final 3 levels, we finish off in Druid. Again, because of the life cleric dip, the build misses out on the insanely good level 20 Druid feature, Archdruid. As powerful as it is, it's just not worth the numerous levels with heavy armor and life berries, along with the boost to all other healing throughout the character's career. For a level 20 one-shot though, I'd go straight Druid. For the ASI feat, I'm going to bump Wisdom again, finishing off with a respectable 18. Depending on your rolled stats, this may change, so use your best judgment since I can't build for every possible stat combination. At Druid 18, Beast Spells allows Druids to cast spells without material components in wild shape form. Here's a look at those spells. Some nice options here, but there are certainly plenty of missing, so be conscious of that. For 9th level spells, Foresight and Shape Change are easy picks. With the remaining 2 preparation slots, go back and fill out whatever you're missing. Plane Shift, Planar Binding are 2 good non-concentration options. And that, my friends, is the build. Rolling dice is a lot of fun, but with it comes increased randomness. And yeah, it's great to start with a 20 in your primary ability score, but with that randomness comes the possibility that you roll absolute trash. With builds like this one, that pill might just be a little easier to swallow.